Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today I have the opportunity to work on a reel that it's kind of an interesting reel in that it's a easy cast reel on a top drag system designed for what we would call saltwater usage, handling between 10 and 14 pound monofilament line. This one was made in Japan. It's the Daiwa long cast reel. And this one says it's the PS 2005. Now I'm not sure if 2005 was the year it was made, but it's quite possible that it is. And it's called the Super Wide Oscillating System. So I want to get a little bit of a look in terms of what that is. I haven't worked on this reel before, but we're going to get started. We'll show you how to take this reel apart, how to service it, how to put it back together again. So let's start by removing that long cast spool. And a long cast spool is normally a higher spool with a taper on the core arbor, and that supposedly allows the line to go out faster. The diameter of the top of the spool is less than the diameter of the bottom of the spool, and that all contributes to letting the line go out easier. So this is the spool. We've taken that off. We'll check the drag washers later. I'm going to take the spool and the adjuster button and just set that off to the side. In order to remove the case, we need to remove the handle. In order to remove the handle, you have a screw button that is the handle screw on the opposite side of the reel. So you always want to check to make sure that you know how your handle is installed, whether it's screwed into the main gear or whether it has a bar that passes through the main gear. And one of the ways to do that is to test the reel by spinning the handle. If this screw turns, there's a high probability that you have the one that has the bar that passes through, and that's what we have here. I'm going to put the handle screw right back into that so I don't lose it, and I'm going to put all the pieces that I take off into a parts tray, which is the bottom of a fast food container in this situation. As I mentioned, this one has the Easy Cast, or in this case called the Auto Cast. I think Shimano is the one who calls it Easy Cast. And when I look at the case is not separated at the bottom here, which means that I have to remove the rotor in order to remove the balance of the case. So we're going to do that right now. There's a spool shim and a click washer. You should be able to pull those off. Those came off pretty easily. And now we have a tie down cap and we have a rotor nut. So let's take the tie down off first. That's held in by a little rotor screw. So this is a good place to tell you to take pictures along the way. If you don't know what this reel is in terms of how it's been made, then pictures are always a good indication of being able to set yourself in a position to reinstall the reel without issue. That looks like a 12 millimeter. I'm going to try a box wrench first. Sometimes you can get these box wrenches over the lip of that. It is about a 1/4 inch lip. Sometimes you can't. We can in this situation, and it does come off in a counterclockwise or a traditional manner, turning it towards you. If we couldn't get that off with the wrench, then what you want to do is go to a deep socket. This is not quite a deep socket enough, but you would kind of do that, and that would enable you to get to that. All right, we should be able to pull this off then. And I suspect this hasn't been off in a while. It's a little bit stuck, but there we go. We'll get that off. Underneath, we can see we have a 1-ball bearing system that's held in by 3 screws, and we'll get to that in a moment. This is why you needed to take the rotor off. There's one more screw on the side plate here underneath the rotor, and if you didn't take that off and you tried to pry the case off by removing these 4 screws, well, you probably would break the case, or you'd give up on the reel saying, I can't get the case off. So that's how you do it. I'm using a micro driver. These are pretty small screws on the exterior of the reel, so let's go ahead and take those off. I'm just going to put them in one corner of my parts tray, just so I keep them together. I did notice on this that 2 of the screws have a different size head than the other 2. So the ones up top here that I've just removed are a little bit bigger, and you want to note that so that when you go to reinstall that you put the smaller ones, which are the ones I'm taking off now, well, you put those back in the lower end of the case. And then I noticed that 5th screw Well, that's got a different colored head. It's got a stainless head, or so it appears. The one on the bottom is also a different diameter, so I guess in this case it'd probably be hard to mess that up because the screw probably would not seat in the bigger hole, and the larger ones wouldn't seat on the bottom here. Okay, I'm kind of curious what they mean by super wide oscillation system, so we're going to find that out in just a moment. So we've just removed the last of those. Now we have that one stainless one underneath here. And this reel is a nice reel. You don't see fast cast in salt water too much, but it is here. I guess it's not just the saltwater reel at 10, 12, 14. Well, that's catfish, that's lakes, and the like, in addition to just being set up for holding or handling the saltwater dimensions of line. All right, 5 screws out. This case should come apart, and it comes apart very easily. And this is a nice reel underneath. We want to look at 2 things here. The first one is that you have a clip on the back here of the main gear, and you want to pay attention to that clip in terms of orientation. You also want to note that there's a ridge back here, and that ridge is going to sit in the groove here for the anti-reverse. So that's part one. The second thing is, if you go to remove that, notice which side that clip sits on. So if you were looking at the reel, this would be on your left side. Then there's a gap, and then there's a shoulder on the right hand side if you go to reinstall. I don't know if we need to take that clip off, but we are going to remove this to ensure that we can clean that main gear up. The case itself is clean, but I'll just do a quick wipe down of this. So this is the second reel in probably as many days that I've just seen with this worm gear drive. I just was working on one the other day, and sure enough, it had a worm gear drive as well. So I guess that's what they mean by the super wide oscillation system. And in this case, you don't need to do much with this. Just make sure that it's working. You could go out and examine the pawl if you like. I'm not going to go do that. If you do need to remove that, you can remove this little hold fast. Now it's going to give you a way to get that worm drive out. But in the general maintenance, you do not need to do that. But I'm going to come up top. I am going to remove the axle shaft and the pinion and the bearing, and make sure that all of that stuff is serviced. And when I do that, I'll be able to put a little bit of grease onto that worm gear. So I saw this one in a spider wire reel. It's called spider cast. The other day we brought one back that we didn't think we were going to be able to make work again, and it too had a worm gear drive in it. The Mitchell 300X's, the new ones, they have a drive in it, but Mitchell is not part of the company that makes Daiwas. Mitchell is a competitor to that. All right, so I've taken the collar off, the axle shaft. This is your pawl here, and we should be able to remove the axle shaft by pulling straight up now. And you want to do that because there's a lot of dirt in the lake here. So this reel is set up as a very nice reel. I don't know what it retailed for. It has a single ball bearing, and that should be enough here. I guess if you wanted to hot rod the reel, you could take the ball bearing, the bushings that are in the collars of the reel, the side plates, and go ahead and replace those with bearings. I don't know if that's necessary, but you could do it. It's not going to affect casting at all, and this was a very smooth reel when it was cranking, so that shouldn't be a problem. I just put those 3 screws together to make sure they are the same size. Again, I'll find a different corner of my parts tray for that. I'm going to take the axle shaft tie down screw and the pawl cover, put them in there as well. And we should just be able to pull this up and out now, and that came out nice and easily. And you can see how this anti-reverse is going to work then. There's an offset camp. We're going to remove the bearing and the bearing washer right now. This is got open bearings. You could grease those if you want to. I prefer to oil all of my bearings, but you could put grease in that if you wanted to. And then here's the cam that's when that anti-reverse dog is engaged, it's going to catch on this lip here to prevent this thing from backstopping. When you take that off, if you take it off, it should come off, right? When you take that off, take a picture, because it is so easy to turn this upside down and then say, why is my anti-reverse not working? So just pay attention to that as you do that. I'm just going to leave that there. We'll just do a quick cleaning. And if anything, the only thing that's a problem with this reel is that it hasn't seen oil or grease in a very long time. I noticed when I just took off the screw that goes through the axle shaft that it still has its original hold-tight sealant on it, so it's a good guess that this reel may have never been serviced in its lifetime. So it's a good time to do it now. We're going to go ahead and put grease onto all of that. I checked the teeth. I made sure that they are all uniform, that there's no issues with them, and that they seat nicely. I'll put that bearing back on. Oops, we're going to put the collar on. Now, I did remember the orientation on this, but if you didn't, well, you might be in for a little bit of trouble. Here's your bearing that went the open side down, and then you had your bearing washer that sits on top of the, underneath the rotor. Sits on top of the assembly. Okay, I'm just going to clean that off. It's a good time. I don't normally put grease onto worm drives. I normally put oil. These are internal, so I don't concern myself with getting a lot of particulate and the like in there that's going to jam the reel. All right, we got the upper drive for this. And put a squirt of oil onto the pawl as well. I'll show you that pawl if I can find a little pliers here. This is your pawl. Looks very much like a saltwater pawl. It has two little forks on it. You want to make sure that it's clean, and this one is clean. I'm just going to go ahead and reinstall that. Then we can put our pinion gear. And now you need to seat that pawl. I took it out, but it's not in the tracks. So hold your finger on it and push, and eventually you will see it seats because you'll know it's moving freely, just like that. Okay, let's get those 3 screws that we had to tie this down. And this is a good time to ask you to subscribe to my channel. If you enjoy this type of effort, if you like to see how fishing reels are serviced, how they come together and by taking them apart, if you will, and making them work, well, I do an awful lot of these. During the pandemic, I've been trying to post daily, kind of in, not sympathy, that's the wrong word, but in support of all of the folks that are first responders who day in and day out deal with much more difficult challenges than I do, and I want to thank all of our first responders and essential personnel for that. I just try to provide a little break in the day showing folks how to do the reels. So I do fishing reels of all kinds. This one's a spinning reel. I do conventional reels. I do ocean, do bait casters, do just about everything that is classified as a fishing reel. And if you want to see more of those, then subscriptions would be nice. And if you want to know when I post, well, then hit the notification button and it will show you the newest ones, and you can choose whether you want to view that one or not. All right, I just got the tarnish off of the axle shaft by using 4O. It's ultra-fine steel wool. It's a buffer. It's not an aggressive paint removing or tarnish removing steel wool. And now we're going to go ahead and seat that axle shaft into the carrier. I'll take the carrier's footing. They had a tapered side, was the side for this, and that slot is where that little stud on the pawl goes, so it seats in like that. Then we'll grab this And this is what I was talking about before. I noticed that the blue is still on the screw, which kind of tells me it's probably never been taken out. But that's okay. All right, we are going to tighten that down. We're going to clean the main gear and re-grease that. Again, if you wanted to take that clip off, and I have no reason to take that clip off, but if you did want to take that clip off, then just note the sides that it comes off of. The main gear is like the pinion gear there. It's just dry, just kind of poking out the old grease. Old grease can trap dirt and the like, and that just becomes an impediment to good performance. So my mind is always asking questions, and the question I have in this is why they take a worm gear oscillation system and call it super wide. If anybody knows the answer to that, that's today's trivia question, I guess. I just don't know. All right, we still have the bushing on this one. Find the tab, that top tab. You have to sight that so that it goes behind this little lever here. That's what's going to drive this to the stop position. That's why they give you the holes in the main gear. You want to align that with that. That's your sighting hole. You can look through to make sure that you have it correct. Just like that, I can see through there now. And the best way to start is to just go over the top so that you know you're in the area, and then look underneath and make sure as you put it in that it was working properly. And then you can give it a twirl and see if it's backstopping. And you can see if you're looking underneath here, it's kind of hard, but if you look underneath there, you will see that as I pull it, it has that backstop. You can see it coming in. That's all we have to do down below. Bushings, you don't need to do much with bushings. They're self-lubricating. If you want to put a little oil on there, you can put a little bit of oil onto it. Let's close the case up then. And we'll go back to my parts tray, pull out those 5 screws. I'm going to start with the one that I know where it goes because I don't have any trouble with that one. That's the silver one that we took out of the top here. So I like this reel. I'm not a fan of the auto cast or the easy cast. I don't use it. It's a hands-free way to throw the line without touching it. You just you kind of use it like, well, one of these spin casters. When you get to about center in the arch, you push the button in there. In this case, what you do is when you get to about let's see, 2 o'clock in your casting angle, what you would do is you would hit that flip switch. That flip switch would release the line and allow it to travel for the balance of the cast. So there's a little bit of a technique there, but I'm kind of old school. I just flip the bail and just crank it in normally. I guess one of the disadvantages to the fast cast is that you do not have instant anti-reverse. You saw the anti-reverse system set up here, and it's only got one stop. That stop is always going to be to the back of the reel, and it's going to just enable you to be set up for the next one. If we reinstall this and for some reason that fast cast function winds up on the other side of the reel, well, that's an easy fix. You just you don't have to take anything apart. All you have to do is pick the rotor up and put it on the other side of the reel. Rotate it 180 degrees. I get those in the shop. I get folks telling me I tried to service my reel and this is what happened. I can't understand why it happened, but I need to get it fixed, right? And of course I tell them just go ahead and change the orientation of the rotor. So we'll see. Does it stop here? It stops here. So that's the way that it's supposed to go. Again, you might wind up with it on the other side. If you did, just go ahead and take it and turn it around. Okay. And just to make sure that I didn't mess it up. Yep, we're back to where we belong. Okay, next up then is the rotor nut. And if you have questions on this reel or any reel in particular, maybe you're working on a reel and it's stuck, maybe you're stuck on it, maybe you forgot how you took it apart, or maybe a part went shooting off into the distance, I'll try and help you out of it. Some of them I just don't know. Some of them are kind of things that you have to feel out. There's no textbook answer to them. I got one of those earlier today, and I can only guess, but sometimes my guess might be worth it to you. Maybe it'll help you fix it. All right, it doesn't have to be on this reel. It can be on any reel. Maybe you're working on a Penn Ocean reel or a Shimano baitcaster or something and you're stuck. Well, I have experiences there too, so just go ahead and leave that. I'm going to put the handle in next. And then we'll put that click ratchet and the little spool shim on. And we'll just check these washers out. I'm always kind of curious what's in the washers. I'm going to guess we're going to have Teflon or felt in this, but I don't know. They make all kinds of washers. They are treated differently. Teflon you would only oil. Felt you would only oil. Teflon you don't need to do any oiling or that because it's a petrochemical product. And some of them have optional oils. If you happen to have a Carbon Tex washer, it's optional in terms of whether you want to use drag grease or not. And if it's leather or anything that's porous, you would use a drag grease. So it's kind of interesting on the materials that the manufacturers select and how you service them. All right, I just removed that spring clip. It is a spring, that's why you saw me holding it so much. There is dirt. That's the downside of a top draft, drag rather. And we have felt washers. So felt washers tend to compress, so you do want to make sure that as you're working on these, that you take the opportunity to service them. The service includes a refresh of the grease and a cleaning, like you can see. This is all dry grease. So what I said before about thinking that maybe this has never been serviced, I'm now knowing it's never been serviced by these because it's full of dirt and grease. Okay, this is a little spring washer. That goes in first. Then you have a flat washer next. And then we have a felt washer, the first of the felt washers. Now they used grease. I use oil. Felt is a material that's permeable and it needs to stay wet in order to stay doing its job. All right. Just trying to get the washer done here. Next up then was the eared washer. Those eared washers have points on them. They go in the slot of the spool. Just like that. And we have the second of the felt washers. Little washer, cap washer. And then we have our lockdown. Make sure that that clip seats into the groove. Let's go ahead and put this back on. While I have that open, I'm going to just take some fishing reel cleaner. So if you have a reel that needs to be serviced, well, I service reels by mail in addition to the walk-in customers that I have. And if you're interested in the service, just drop me a note. I'll be happy to provide you with reel repair and servicing information, how you can get that reel to me, and pricing and so on. All right. Drag which button goes on next? While I have that, I'm going to just use that to take the dust off. Overall, this is a nice reel. I am surprised by the worm jive. I think that's a nice touch. And I haven't quite figured out what they mean by that, by the super wide oscillation. But look at that reel. What a nice reel. That's a pretty reel. Okay. And again, when you have it in the anti-reverse mode, it will come back to here. As you're casting and you're in that 2 o'clock position, that's when you trip this. You don't have to touch the line to let the line out, and then it will flip back. So that's it. That's your Daiwa PS 2005 long cast spool, meant for the bigger fish, 10 to 14 pound fish. So I hope you've enjoyed that. So this is Dennis. Please, everybody, stay safe, stay well, and stay watching. And please have a great day.